Hello, Classic Cinema with the Sage Sisters fans. We're so happy that you're here with us. My name is Lucinda Sage Midgordon. I'm the oldest sister,
I'm Celeste Sage Tate. I am the youngest of four.
and today we are talking about the best years of our lives, and we're kind of using this as our Memorial Day weekend movie, although who knows if it's going to get published near Memorial Day, but it's one of the great movies because it came out in 1946, I think, and it's the first movie that actually deals with what the soldiers and the families have to deal with when people come home from war.
Yeah,
So we have some traumatized people. We have a person who has his hands were amputated.
yeah,
Harold Russell.
yeah.
So it was nominated for a lot of Oscars. And what did Betty Davis say about this movie?
Betty Davis said it's the most perfect film she ever saw.
Yes. And
And
William Wyler, who
yeah,
does William Wyler's the director of this, but Billy Wilder, sometimes I get those two mixed up. Billy Wilder, who did a lot of comedies, said this movie, he tears up at this movie every time he
every
watches it.
time.
Yeah,
I'm not sure there's many moments where you don't feel everything.
I know. I know.
Um, because it really does depict not just their PTSD, which of course they
Right.
called it brain trauma back then, but that word isn't even brought up in it, by the
Yeah.
way.
Right. It isn't.
Nothing has to be brought up because it's so well acted and written that it's very evident their real personal struggles, each
Yeah.
three of these men
Yeah.
that happen to just meet because they end up on the same flight home to their same hometown that
Right.
they all lived in at the
Yep.
same time prior to the war, but did not know each other.
Did never meet each other.
They never
So
met.
I'm going to read the description. Although I have a little bit of a thing that I'm going to say that I disagree with the description. But first off, here's the description. World War II veterans, two of them traumatized or disabled, return home to the American Midwest to discover that they and their families have been irreparably changed. Now, I think there's Al, who is the oldest, and he was an infantryman, and I think he is traumatized, but I think he was always a functioning alcoholic.
I kind of get the feeling that might be true, but I'm not sure. But he is definitely a functioning alcoholic coming home
After
from
the
the
war.
war.
Yeah. And then there's Fred, who was a bombardier, and they're in the kind of plane that he used to work in when he was in the war. So they're in the nose of the plane, and it's all windows, and they can see everything as they're flying across the country. Now, I don't know how this happens because uh, Fred came from Europe and Al, and then the third one is Homer,
Yeah.
who has his hands amputated. Those two were in the Pacific, but Fred, I think, was in Europe.
He
But
was in Europe.
they all end up on the West Coast somehow, trying to get home to the
Well,
Midwest.
Jamie was explaining, they only had certain hubs
Oh,
that they funneled all of the soldiers to. And
oh,
if
I
you were
see.
kind of in your general area, that's where
Uh-huh.
you ended up.
Yeah, yeah, because
But
it,
and I
we,
think because it was kind of chaos, they didn't really
oh,
have a plan
yeah,
after the war on how to get everyone home because
right,
it's obvious, when
right.
they got people taking regular domestic flights and Fred is in the domestic flight um terminal
Terminal,
trying to figure out how to get home and they're like, "Oh, hey, you got to go to well across the tarmac there and
right, to the military.
to the
Yeah,
military,
yeah,
which is, just some makeshift building that they put up."
yeah.
And they're obviously flying them all out in military planes.
Right. Now, the way we know that is because Al says something to his wife about, I thought I was going to get stuck in Portland. So
Yep.
I think that's where they all meet up is in Portland.
Yeah. Right.
And then they fly from there to the Midwest, which I think it's a made up town, but I think it's based on Cincinnati, Ohio. I think
It's
I
supposed to
read
be
that
Ohio. Yeah. Yeah.
in
It's
the
supposed to
trivia.
be. It's in Ohio.
So it is in Ohio. So which is kind of mid in the Midwest.
Kind of. Yeah. Which is
And
interesting. I mean, because they're told when they get the flight and the three of them are told, hey, it's going to take you several days to get there because there's a whole bunch of stops that have to happen.
yeah,
So that's also an indication that they're flying from the west to pretty much the East Coast.
almost the East
It's
Coast.
I
Yeah.
always find it interesting that they call Ohio the Midwest. When you look at the map, it doesn't
Well, yeah, it is pretty
kind of
close.
stuck in a weird spot.
Yeah, because when we visited Heather and John when they lived in Cleveland, no, didn't they live in
Columbus.
Columbus? It didn't take us very long, and we were in West Virginia,
Right,
and
right.
it was like, and Pennsylvania, and it was like these are all
Yeah,
so close together. Um, because we're used to, we live in the West, we're used to big,
oh
taking us
yeah,
5 hours to get across the state or however,
yeah,
whatever it is. But yeah, it only took a couple of hours to get to Pennsylvania or
yeah.
West Virginia or someplace like that.
Well, and they it's probably kind of like a really interesting. I love how this probably does tell real stories of what
Yes.
happened with soldiers, that if you are
Yeah,
all flying to the same hometown, they're just going to clump you all together and put you on this plane, and
right.
not luxurious in any way, shape, or form.
Oh no, they're
They
sleeping
didn't
in the
have seats to sit
nose.
in. They're
Yeah.
laying around on all these bags of something.
Right. Which is now one of the things I am going to put a still in here is this is uh they're showing one of the nights when they're sleeping and Harold Harold, I keep calling him Harold. His character name is Homer.
Homer.
Homer is sleeping and Al and Fred are talking and Al says something about I'm afraid they're going to try and rehabilitate me when I get home.
Yeah,
And Fred says, give me a good job and a nice little house, and I'm rehabilitated.
right.
And well, then the next little scene is if they are asleep and the dawn is happening, and Homer wakes up and looks out the window at the dawn and he has tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I read in the trivia was a lot of soldiers, maybe all of them, felt butterflies and nervous and stress
Oh yeah,
coming
coming home.
home
Yeah.
because
And
it
soldiers still do that
and
have been
it's
in war.
oh
Not
yeah,
you. Yeah.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So that kind of shows that the look on his face shows what's gonna happen when I get home,
Well, and
yeah.
for him, he has hooks for hands.
Right.
And he even says to, Fred and Al, my family's never seen anything outside of our community.
Yeah. They've
They
never
don't
seen anything
know, they
like
don't
this.
know what to expect. They know I've lost my hands, but
Right.
they don't know what that means.
Yeah, and then they ask, "Do you have a girlfriend?" "Oh, yeah, I do. Wilma, we've been dating since high school, but she's never seen anything like this either." So I think she's the one he's most worried about.
Yeah, because they promised to get married when he came back.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And he's
he
probably
doesn't know.
thinking, why would she want me now?
Right, exactly. Which I think he even says that at one point. And hopefully we'll get to see a little clip of that when they finally resolve that at the end. I'm gonna try to keep them really, really short. So that's the first thing that I want to show is the still of Homer looking out at the dawn and they're almost home. They're almost home by then.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I thought is I'd show a little bit of Al's homecoming when he walks down the hall toward.
Well, I really like Homer's homecoming too. I
Yes.
think Homer's is pretty profound as well
Yes.
because they're all so excited to see him, but the part that's, and this is the other thing that's so great too, is Fred and Al don't have the taxi pull away.
Right. They
They want
watch.
to see Homer's family greet him.
Right.
I mean, they've been flying together for what, 3 or 4 days possibly, and they've really
Yeah.
gotten to know each other and they care about each other already.
Yeah. They
You know,
do.
they may have been in, different types of combat, but
Yeah.
have a bond.
Yeah, and it's great that his little sister, it's like she's so excited.
She doesn't even think anything of it.
And yeah, well,
Ants,
maybe she's 10, do you
I
think?
don't know. We're trying to figure it out too. She could be maybe around 10.
Um,
Um, but how
but
little she must have been when Homer left.
oh my gosh, really? Yeah. So, but the thing is when the taxi starts to drive away and he raises his hand and waves at them and he's got hooks and
Right.
his mother starts to cry and he Wilma comes because she lives right next door. She comes over and she hugs him, but he can't put his arms around her.
Oh, right. And that's the wonderful thing that the comment the men make.
Yeah.
Boy, Fred says the Army sure did a good job teaching him how to use those hooks. And
Or the Navy. He was in the
the
Navy.
Navy, excuse me, yeah, the Navy, they sure taught him how to use those hooks. And Al says, yeah, but they couldn't teach him to put his arms around his girl.
Right. Yeah.
And that's just like, whoa.
Yeah. It's so heartbreaking. I mean, it
So,
makes me
yeah.
cry. I know,
Oh,
really. Which
and of course,
fortunately,
Fred's just like, God,
yeah,
you
that's
know.
true. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
so interesting too. I love how with each three of these men, they show the very different lives they led
Yes.
prior to the war.
Right.
And they show Fred very poor. His father is obviously a functioning alcoholic. They live
Yes.
that, you can hear the
Under the
train, and
tracks.
they live under the tracks on the wrong side of the tracks, so to speak.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Dirt poor.
Mm-hmm.
When they drop off, the next stop is Al, and he lives in the high rise. He's a banker, you
Right.
and it's very pish posh and swank, but it makes you wonder how Al may have been before,
Yes.
because he is so not schwanky and stuck up and
Where's Mom?
Who's that at the door, Peggy? Peggy! Rob, who's... I look terrible.
Who says so?
Let me look at you.
Don't look now. I need a bath and a shave.
You don't mind, Mom. Dad, darling. I guess I'd better call the Kenworthys and tell them we won't be over this evening.
My son. My daughter. I don't recognize you. What's happened?
Just a few years of normal growth. Don't you approve?
I don't know yet. Gotta have more time to get to know you.
Hello? Oh, Alice. This is Millie. I'm terribly sorry, but we can't be over.
And also when his boss calls, he's not happy to talk to him. He doesn't
Oh,
really want to go back to the bank.
right.
And in fact, it's obvious that his thinking is completely
Completely
different
changed. Yeah,
because some soldier comes in and wants a loan. He has no collateral,
right.
but Al grants him the loan and he gets in a little bit of trouble about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well,
But
I mean, they give him this promotion
right,
because you're the man who will understand the soldiers.
right,
Been there, you fought alongside them, and
right,
here he makes this choice to
right,
give this man who obviously has farming skills, who obviously is dedicated to it, and then they
right,
question him on it.
right.
Like, well, what did you do that for? Well, this isn't what you told me to do.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
then,
this
but
is
then,
how I
well,
know I
we
can
have a
trust him.
responsibility to
Yeah,
our investors.
right, right. You know,
No,
so it's just I think the feeling you definitely get it throughout this whole film is first of all, they keep running into each other. Like,
right, right.
you know, Fred just keeps trying. He goes to his parents' home, his mom and his stepmom, by the way,
Yeah,
and he calls her Gladys. And then his dad and his wife that he marries 20, they only had 20 days together before he took off to Europe.
right.
She was living with them when
He
he left,
left.
but she's not living with them anymore. Oh, she needed to move out. You know, she got a job and
Right.
they knew the apartment because they had to send her his money that he was sending back
And letters. Yeah,
and letters, but he can't find her there. She's just
right.
not there. So
She's
once
gone
again,
off to work.
yeah, she's at work. She's a entertainer, singer, entertainer lady at some nightclub. And so as they're driving through town, of course, um, Homer, hey, that's my
Butches.
uncle's bar. That's Butch's. Hey, he got a new neon sign, and oh, the family, they think, he's a low life because he sells alcohol.
All right.
I mean,
Yeah.
but and that's another important character in this film too is
Mm-hmm.
his Uncle
Mm-hmm.
Butch.
Yeah.
Uncle Butch is very compassionate and wise
Yep.
and
And supportive.
so supportive, so
Yeah.
supportive,
Yeah.
and just gives Homer really great advice,
Yeah. Now I
and
got the
so that's
impression.
where they keep meeting, by the way.
Yeah, I got the impression from when they're that one of the times they're at Butch's, that Homer went into the Navy right out of high school
Oh, I've got that
because
impression as well. Right,
in the
right,
trivia I read that for a while it was okay for under 21 age people to drink beer, but it was not okay for them to drink hard liquor. And Butch
right.
will not let Homer drink anything but beer.
Because he's still not of age.
Right. He's not 21
Yeah,
yet.
which is interesting that was the laws in America was beer was okay at 18.
Yeah, and then they changed him, of course.
Of course, of course.
But at that time, and maybe it's a choice, but we're going to talk about the first night they're home is really tough for each of them. Fred can't find his wife. He's been to all these nightclubs looking for her.
Which is
And he
hours
ends
upon
up at
hours.
Butch's.
Yeah,
Then Homer they're trying to have a little gathering with Wilma's family and they hit their family and they're having lemonade. And it's in these kind of glasses that are really hard for him to use his hooks.
yeah,
And he drops the lemonade when his mom gives it to him. And he's just so embarrassed. So he ends up at Butch's.
yeah. And you feel the tension in the room, period.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody knows how to be with Homer.
Right.
And then
Nobody.
I don't know if you noticed, but in the background, right behind Homer is his sister, and she keeps
Yes.
staring at his hands. She's staring at
Yes.
those hooks. And
Yes.
the father or a mother at one point says, "Hey, you need to go upstairs." Or she's like,
No,
"What?"
he just shakes his head.
Like,
Don't
it's doing that.
don't do that. Yeah. And Homer explains to because Butch is asking him, how come you're here? How come you're not with your family?
Right.
And he explains to him, I don't know how to be with them. Dad I've seen him clean his pipe a million times, and he started cleaning his pipe, and then he realized he had hands and I didn't, and so he's trying to hide the
Trying to hide his
pipe,
hand. Yeah.
hide his hands. Yeah, I mean, the only one who seems totally oblivious is Wilma's father, who's going on and on and on about how the economy is going to go downhill and blah, 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 all this stuff.
Soldiers can't find jobs. How are they going
Right,
to create jobs? There's no jobs for the returning soldiers, and they're
right.
going to take
Yeah.
jobs away from the people that took the soldiers' jobs, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just,
I know.
and
Kind of
everyone's just
oblivious.
kind of tolerating him,
Right.
listening,
Right.
because
And
he's just,
then we and
he's
then we
sweet.
get to see Al, and they've had dinner, and he's giving all these souvenirs, a samurai sword and a flag, a Japanese flag that has all the names on it and all this stuff to his son. And his son is talking about what they've been learning in school about
The
the
atomic
atomic
bomb.
bomb and the effects of the atomic bomb.
Yeah, and
And
he's asking his dad, so did you get to see what happened?
yeah,
What happened with that? And how, if how his teacher is like, if we don't come up with a resolution for this, we're all just going to die.
right,
That's just the next war is just going to be just a big bomb,
right. We're gonna, right.
and
Yeah,
but they don't it's obvious again in this family situation that he doesn't even know how to communicate with his own son because he didn't get to see him grow up.
I know.
He's
He's
now in
been
high
gone for,
school.
yeah, yeah. He's been gone for 4 years and, or however many years. And he and his wife been married for 20 years. So he must be in his 40s.
I would
And,
think so. Yeah.
and we never know why he signed up because he probably could have been exempt.
Well, having a family, he probably could have. Yes, that's
And
probably.
also, he was in his late 30s or early
Yeah.
40s. Yeah. So, and he was an infantryman, which meant that's hard. You
He
got to
saw
walk a
he
lot,
saw
carry
all on ground war. He did.
backpacks.
The front
Yeah.
lines. Yeah.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
is interesting, being that he is an educated and he's a banker.
Right.
It makes you also wonder if he was like, no, don't treat me differently.
Don't make me an officer.
I don't want to be an officer. I don't want to sit behind a desk.
Right.
You don't, those words never come out of his mouth, but you kind of go, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
They, it was well known if you were educated and if you were kind of upper class, you didn't get put on the front line
Right.
for not
Well,
fighting that.
and going back to his son, I think it's interesting that, Peggy, that I forgot the son's name. But Peggy says to him, don't you have homework to do? Or,
Yeah,
and so he starts to leave without taking the things that his father brought him, and his mother reminds him, and he takes them. And he goes, oh, Dad, you've been everywhere. You probably know a whole bunch of stuff. And he goes, kid, he doesn't call him kid. I don't know
I don't know
anything.
anything. Yeah,
You are way smarter than me.
yeah.
So that's,
That does come up. He's like, you know, I understand all of you've had it rough at home, and Peggy's like, oh, we got along just fine,
yeah,
because they're all aware, but I don't think the awareness when they first come home, any of these soldiers, nobody had any idea what it would be to fight in a war like
oh
that.
man, I know,
No
really.
concept whatsoever.
I know. Yeah.
Because it's like it's such the opposite. Leaping forward to Vietnam, that was televised everywhere. And
Yes.
that's why the soldiers were treated so horribly, because people were like, what? So to understand, yeah, they had World War One, but I still think, look how much longer it is. How can you begin to understand?
Well, the United States was only in World War One for a year and a half or something
Yeah,
like that.
right. So to understand the trauma of
Oh yeah.
constant bombing and having to shoot someone to kill them, and
Yeah.
no, none of us could even begin to understand that
No.
now or back then, ever.
Yeah.
So
So
So,
So
integrating yourself back into your family, having every cell change from war is
right.
this movie does an amazing job showing that.
Yeah, and one of the ways that Al deals with it after his son goes to bed is, oh, let's go out
Yeah, because they can't find any alcohol really in the
in the
house.
house.
You
Right.
know, um, she's trying to find stuff. She goes, "Oh my gosh, we're not prepared for this." And
Yeah, why didn't he?
be okay. It'll be good, Mom. We'll go
Yeah.
shopping tomorrow,
Yeah, so they
And
go
just like
bar
he's got
hopping.
antsy in his pantsies. He's just like,
Hmm.
I can't. He can't handle that kind of energy right now.
Right. So they go bar hopping, and we see this montage of that. And then they end up at Butch's, where everybody is.
Yeah,
And
the two
so,
men are there. Yeah,
yeah, and so Al introduces them to Millie, Fred and Homer to Millie and Peggy.
yeah.
And of course, Butch tells after a little bit, Homer, you got to go home. They're going to get used to you and you're going to get used to them. And
It's
so
just
he
going to
sends,
take time
right,
and patience. Yep.
right. So now Hoagie Carmichael plays Butch. And at one point, um, I think it's Homer says, play, I think it's Lazy River. Play. You remember
No,
that song? Well,
no, no.
Hoagie
It's not.
Carmichael is
It's not
he,
Lazy River. It's
whatever it is, Hoagie Carmichael wrote it.
He wrote it. Yeah, he wrote it.
He wrote the
Ogie
book. I
Carmichael is an
mean,
Oscar-winning. He wrote music and he won
oh
Oscars
yeah.
for it.
Oh yeah.
He's
Oh yeah. Yeah.
extremely, extremely talented.
Yes. So Al comes and asks him to play this one particular song. It's his and Millie's song.
Right.
And so they dance. And then that's sort of one thing that sort of kind of breaks the ice.
Yes.
And Fred is so sloshed that he keeps asking Peggy who she is and what her
Oh yeah.
name is.
Well, I mean, when they walk in, Al is already three sheets to the wind. He's
Yeah.
just kind of slurring his words.
Well, and so is Fred. So is
Yep.
Fred.
Because he's
Yeah.
been sitting at the bar trying to figure out where he's going to sleep that night, probably, and
Yeah.
how's he going to find his wife,
Right. So they take him home because, well, they try to take him to his apartment building, but she's not answering and she's probably still at work. So they take him home to their apartment and put him at, uh, Peggy puts him in her bed and takes off his shoes and loosens his tie and his belt and covers him up. And then she goes and sleeps on the couch while Millie is getting Al ready for bed. And I love it when they both Millie comes out and says, "You'll be okay here, won't you, Peggy?" And Peggy says, "Yeah." And then they look at each other and they laugh because
Because it's been a hysterical night. Well, one of the things,
yeah,
the cutest scenes when they're dropping off, trying to see if Fred can get into the apartment building where his wife lives, is they put him because he's kind of he falls against the outside wall, and they're like, okay, well, she's not answering, so they put him in the back seat with Al, and his arm ends up around Al, and Al cuddles up to him and is rubbing his hand. It's such great little scenes that happen. And he feels, because Fred wears this bracelet, and he feels the bracelet. He's kind of like,
what are
what
you
is
doing?
that?
Yeah,
It's
right.
so funny. And
I
they
know.
just chuckle. Don't they make a lovely couple?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's so during, I know what you're going to head to is everyone's asleep
Yes.
and Fred has a nightmare.
And I'm just going to show probably a short little bit of that clip. And if it gets challenged, then I'll just do a still of it. But yeah, Peggy hears him and she is so kind to him.
Well, she works in a hospital that,
Right.
because Al does ask earlier, does she, she's grown so much. Does she know about boys? Does she know about, she goes, Al, she has been working in the hospital for some time. She probably knows more than you and I
Right.
about
Yeah.
everything she needs to know.
Right.
And you can tell that by the way she lays Fred in bed, and she loosens his belt and takes his shoes off, and she really makes sure he's comfortable.
Right.
And then how she deals with him because he's verbal. He's having this terror dream of
What
what
happened?
happened during, I mean, they had to quickly, they're obviously having to get out of the airplane and get their parachutes and
Because it's on fire.
on fire, and he watches
A friend
Godusky,
died.
a friend, die, perish.
Yeah.
And that's so awful. And
It's
how she
traumatic.
just comes in and he's sweating and he's crying and she just soothes him.
Yeah.
She just soothes him and wipes his brow
Right.
and tells him it's all okay and he's
And,
safe.
and he can go back to sleep.
She's on fire. She's on fire.
Watch it. I'm ready. Record number 4. Keep pressing forward. Watch out for pilot truck. Spread to the wing. The wing on fire. She's out of control. Pull around as it. She's going down.
Hey, you guys, jump! Get out of there! Bail out! Godowski! Godowski, get out of that plane! Two chutes open. 3. Come on, the rest of you guys.
Fred,
Come on, get out!
Fred, wake up.
Godowski!
Wake up.
Godowski!
Wake up.
She's burning up! Get out!
Fred,
Get out!
Fred, wake up. Wake up.
She's burning up! She's gonna hit! Look out!
It's all right, Fred. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep, Fred. There's nothing to be afraid of. All you have to do is go to sleep. And rest. Go to sleep. Go to sleep, Fred. Go to sleep. And rest. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. All you have to do is
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love later he says to her, you were very kind and you didn't even mention it because she fixes
Right.
breakfast for him before he leaves. And
Right.
you didn't even mention it. And then she drives him back to the apartment
Right.
when she's off to her job at the hospital. And and that's the beginning, I think, of the contrast between Peggy and Marie, his wife,
Yes. Huge contrast.
played by Virginia Mayo. I didn't say who plays all the people. Dana Andrews plays Fred. Frederick March plays Al. Myrna Loy plays Millie. Teresa Wright plays Peggy, and Virginia Mayo plays Marie. Now, Harold Russell, who plays Homer, was not an actor. We have to say that.
No, he's not. He was
He,
not.
I think William
We
Wyler saw
saw
him in
him in
some
a small
training
film
videos.
where he was training how to use your,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. And he was real. William Wyler was really upset when Samuel Goldwyn sent Harold off to acting lessons because he didn't want him to be an actor.
Oh, he didn't want him to be. But it's okay. It worked out well anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
he
that was,
stopped that.
I mean, that's studios running the show,
Yeah,
right?
right,
They take your ideas away from you. And so,
right.
especially back then. And I guess, even somewhat now, studios really try to control things.
Oh yeah.
And that's why we probably have a lot more independent films. So,
Yes.
but it's Virginia Mayo is, if you know anything about Virginia Mayo, she is not a good person in this in this at all. And I don't mean like evil. She's just very selfish. She
Yes.
is not kind. She is not empathetic. She's a
No.
party girl, so to speak.
Yes. Definitely.
Just really in it for herself.
Right.
And you
And
get
when
the clear
she,
understanding right there when he comes home that
oh
morning
yeah.
why she couldn't live with his parents. Because first of all, she probably didn't like that they lived underneath and around the train tracks.
Right.
And they didn't have the kind of lifestyle she wanted to live, which was footloose and fancy free.
Right.
She
Now,
has no idea of how to live a it's nothing. She is nothing. Let's just put it this way. She's nothing what Fred says he wants in the
exactly. Right. And the other thing about that is when he comes home after, well, when he first comes home that morning and he's got his uniform on with all of his ribbons and all that stuff. Oh, you look so great. Look at all those ribbons, blah, blah, blah. Well, when he comes later and he's just wearing a regular suit, she's like, oh, oh. She fell
What are
in
you
love
wearing
with
that
him.
for?
She
Yeah.
fell in love with him when he was wearing his
Fell in love
uniform.
with the uniform. She fell in love with the uniform and the idea of the uniform,
Hmm.
which, what is that? What is the idea of that? I mean,
I
that
know.
doesn't make any sense, right? Um,
Yeah, I kind
yeah,
of
I
don't
mean,
get that
I
whole
mean,
fetish of the uniform.
he works, yeah, I've never understood that either. She, works really hard to, uh, I don't think she thinks his wife, Marie, is, I don't think at first she thinks she's trying to push him away, but she is.
Mhm.
He's boring to her. He talks about, hey, don't have to get a job right away. I got $1,000. And within a finish, they never give you timelines, but within a short amount of time, they've run out of money. And I
Right,
guarantee they've run out of money because she wants to go out every night. She
right.
she wants to party.
Yeah,
She's
and then
not a cook at home kind of gal.
the apartment is it's always a mess.
She's a
And
mess. Oh yeah.
it's small. It wouldn't be
Oh
that
my
hard
gosh,
to
I think
clean it
it's
up.
like a studio,
I know.
The
Well,
only
there's
thing
a
they really have
kitchen,
that's separate is the kitchen or the bathroom.
the bathroom, and the closet where you can put stuff. Yeah, because they have to, it's like a pull down bed in the
Well,
living
yeah,
room.
the bed is in the closet. You can see he's in there
Oh,
trying to
that's
change his
right.
clothes because
Oh,
she
yeah, that's
begs
right.
him to put his uniform back on when they go out. Oh, I'll
Right.
be so proud of you. And he's in there and he keeps running into the bed. So it's
Yes,
not
that's
even
right.
a wall bed. You pull it
Right.
out, you put it in the middle of the living room, which in itself is not very large.
No.
So I mean, probably she couldn't find much more than that because it is during the war and she's working.
Right.
You get the impression, well, you hear later how much money he was making, $400 a month. And then he says something about the money that she was also making, which would have been $500 a month that she was living off of because she was probably making $100 a month.
Yeah.
And then she had
Or
his.
he I can't remember it all added up to about 500 a month, which was a lot then.
Oh
That
yeah, right, right.
that was a lot.
And but I mean, their life is miserable. I mean, you can tell he's just not happy.
No.
But
And
he's
we never
trying to make it work.
and we yes, he is. And we never said what he did, but before the war he worked in a drugstore. And he
Yeah.
worked behind the
Soda fountain, the
soda
ice cream
fountain.
soda fountain. Yeah.
Well, and also they did sandwiches and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
So,
was it was the bar, like if anybody knew of the old Woolworths, it was like that. It had
yes.
the drugstore, it had your perfumes and
Right.
toys. It was kind of like you could go there and get a lot of little things.
Mhm.
And of course, his vow to himself is, I'm not going to go back to that.
Right.
I'm going to find something that's a serious upgrade for myself.
Yeah, and when he gets there, he just wants to see the man who owned it because he really liked
They
that guy.
sold out, right?
And that guy wants him to work at the drugstore again.
Yeah.
So he takes him up to the new manager of because it's a part of a big chain then.
Yep. Yep.
And it's only 32.50 a week, which, for that time period might have been kind of a
Probably
middle.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
and he would still have to work behind the soda fountain. I mean, he'd get to manage the rest of the store, co-manage the
uh-huh.
rest of the store, but he also, on occasion, would have to work behind the soda and ice cream
Right.
counter and make sandwiches.
Right.
Well, and he's trying. Boy, he does try. He tries to find a job. And
Mm-hmm.
then worse comes to worse, and there's just no jobs for soldiers because everyone's like, well, what did you do during the war? You know,
What's
even
your
the drug
education? And
manager is like, well, what kind of education did you have? Did you
yeah.
manage people? Did you do this? Nope, I just dropped bombs. Well, probably not really anything we can get you except for, you can be the assistant out there.
Yeah. Right.
And of course, he walks away going, I'm not doing that. I'm not going back to that. So he and his wife party, and then they show, part of Al's life again, trying to get back to things, and how, that night after they've been out drinking, he wakes up and gets his shower, and um Millie has made him breakfast, and she's going to give him breakfast in bed. And the children have left, gone to school, gone to their job and daughter's job, and how you can see they want so badly to be intimate and hug, but they don't know how to be with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, how do we get there? But yet, of course, it happens. And then the bank boss calls.
Right.
Oh, we just want you to, come in. Of course, and he comes in and finds out he gets this promotion and gives him a briefcase with his initials, and you can see Al's just like, okay. And he goes, take as long as you need. Of course you need a vacation. Do what you need.
But he gives him
Don't
this
come back.
briefcase that is full of files.
But these have files in there that you can look through in the meantime. And then, then you get the scene with Homer. Still doesn't really know how to be at home. He's in the
Right.
shed, just kind of shooting a gun, doesn't know what to do. And his sister and her friends are outside the window
Right.
peeking in, you know.
Because Peggy's come
And
over and
right, because they're like, sure, they're showing his, look what he can do with his hands. And to the kids, they're not freaking out. They're just fascinated.
I don't think
They're
it's just
fascinated
the
how he can,
uh,
and then of course his sister doesn't even know him. I like once again, she was probably so little,
but
but
I
then
don't think it's just that. Because she says they're engaged to be married.
they're
So when they
engaged. Yeah, she's so
yeah,
excited that he's back and everything.
right.
So of course, uh, his girlfriend comes over because she's wanting to connect with him so
Yeah.
bad, and
Yeah.
he's just isolating himself, and she wants to talk to him, but he doesn't know how to talk to her.
Right.
And then, of course, he gets angry with the kids and shoves his hands. Do you want to look at these? Look at these. And they're just like, no, it's not what we. And they run away, and
Yeah.
and so
Because
sad because
I think they were
I
just
think
sort of
in some
spying on
ways,
them. Yeah.
yeah, I think in some ways he's more uncomfortable than everybody else. And he's expecting everyone to be uncomfortable. So therefore, he makes the assumption that they're all uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
because
even says to
his
him,
dad
like,
says
why do
to
you want?
Peggy, yeah, his dad says to Peggy, I tried to connect with him because he's out mowing the lawn when Peggy's coming to go talk to him, to Homer.
Not
And
Peggy, Wilma,
excuse me,
Wilma.
Wilma, right. Oh, excuse me, getting the girls mixed up. Wilma, and he says, we're trying to connect with him, but
Right,
we just don't know.
right.
He just wants to be by himself.
Yeah, he just keeps going to be by himself.
So you can tell
And you
he's
can tell how sad
depressed.
his dad is about it.
Yeah.
His dad is so sad.
Yeah.
Because once again, now you learn that he is getting a pretty decent sum from the government for his loss of his hands. That's a
Mhm.
disability money he's getting.
Mhm.
But still, I mean, you have to wonder, what are you going to do with yourself?
Right.
It's hard enough for the soldiers that came back physically whole.
Right.
How is a man that has no hand? What's he going to do?
Yeah.
That's
What kind
probably
of a
what Homer's
job? Yeah,
Oh my
because
God,
he could
the
probably
job that
get
I've got.
something, but
Oh, I'm
what?
sure he could. He can sign his name. He can file through. I
Yeah,
mean, he can use those. He's shooting a gun for heaven's sakes.
right. Yeah.
So, you know, their adjustment, these are the things that we need to point out is each little scene they show with the three of them trying to adjust to their lives is extremely profound
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm
because
going to go back.
Fred has to tell Marie, he comes back in, he's got a box full of food, and she's like, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, we're out of money." He goes, "We're eating home tonight." Well, why?
Right.
Why do we have to do that? Can't you get a job? And he's like,
Snap
"I'm
out of
working on
it.
it." She goes,
Snap.
and then she brings up, "Oh, you talk to yourself in your sleep, honey."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah." And she goes, she says, "This is what you're saying." And he goes, it's just someone I knew." Well, snap out of it. What's the matter with you?
Right. Yeah.
Get back into life.
Which I was
Uh,
just going to point out, that is the huge contrast between the way Peggy treated him and the way
Yep.
Marie is treating him.
Oh,
And
totally different.
and even though I don't think he loves Peggy, he just keeps thinking about
It's a
the
problem.
contrast.
Yeah, because he's just like, yeah, I'll get over it. That's really what he says. Yeah, sure, I'll get over it. And then she's like, well, I got a little money saved. Let's go out. Because she's all dressed, ready to go. Like,
Yeah.
this is their routine. They
Yeah.
go out every night. And he's like, nope, we're eating at home cooked meal. You're just going to have to put up with it. And she acts like a child,
She does.
lumps into this chair in the living room and takes off her false eyelashes and is pouting. She's pouting. She is
Yeah.
literally pouting.
Yeah.
Another contrast
Yeah.
because it's all about her.
Right. Everything's about her.
I
Right.
can't, we go have fun. You're
Mhm.
supposed to be fun loving.
When do we get, well, he says, well, we got married for better or worse. Well, when do we get to the better?
Yeah, when do we get to that? She's just so angry. Which Virginia Mayo, I mean, this is a perfect film because every single cast member is perfectly cast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Virginia Mayo really wanted this part. She wanted to not play this, not, she never really played the blonde bimbo, but she never felt challenged up
Mm-hmm.
until this part. And then after this movie, she starts to get really challenging parts. She wanted this so bad. She didn't want to play the pretty singy, beautiful figure. I mean, she was so done with it. It
Mm-hmm.
never was fun for her. At
Right.
first, yes. Okay, got to get my foot in the door. But when they were able to cast her and they saw the acting chops that she had, she you love to hate her
Yeah, you do.
because she is deplorable.
Yeah. Now, at some point after that, um, Peggy finds out where Fred's working,
Oh
and so
yeah,
she
she
goes to
finds
see
out
him,
from her dad.
and they go
Yeah.
out to lunch, and it's at a place where he said he was never going to go again, but looked
He
like
had
an
this
okay
really
place
great
to
little
be.
Italian restaurant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was only $1.95 or
Dollar
something.
29 for two of their meals, their wine and dessert.
Right. I wish we had those days back.
And but you
Anyway,
can tell they've been having a wonderful lunch
yeah,
because when she comes to see him at the drugstore, he's behind the perfume counter and they're talking and I can't just talk to you. I got to be selling you something. And that's when he says, "Hey, a little bit, I get an hour lunch. You want to go?"
yeah,
And you can see even when they first meet, there's something between them.
right,
But neither one of them are ready to acknowledge that.
right,
They're not ready for it yet because
right.
he's married.
Right. And then when they're getting ready to go and she's getting ready to get in the car and he's going back to work, he kisses her. Now, in the 40s, a married man kissing a single woman is like, ah, no, no, no. But
Yeah,
she's proactive. And she
she is.
calls up Marie and says, let's go double dating tonight. And of
Yeah,
course, Marie
yeah.
jumps on that.
Because it's on me.
Right.
Of course, someone else is going to pay for it. They're going to go to some big fancy club.
Yes.
and dinner's on them. So Marie tells him, and he's like, what are we doing that? Why are we doing that? And she's like, why? Are you worried? You know, because she thinks, is there something between you two? And he goes, you got nothing to worry about. He says, I just don't like handouts,
Right.
which is, also true. He
Yes.
wants so desperately to make it on his own.
Yes.
But
Yes.
of course, he's nervous that it's Peggy. And
And
that night
Peggy's
is, and Peggy
Peg,
invites some guy that's always liked her, and she thinks he's a bunch of nothing and he's a big
yeah.
pill. But the
I
one
don't
thing he says as they're having their night it's the double date, he says, why don't you marry me? We're not going to turn out like those two. Peggy goes, what do you mean? He goes, can't you tell they hate each other?
yeah.
And Peggy's like, oh. And that's pretty profound, which, more dancing happens, which I can't figure out how they dance in this place because you can't move.
Right.
Claustrophobia,
I
so
know.
tightly. And so then they sit down. Oh, we want a picture. And then the two girls go to the bathroom and she's talking to Peggy. Oh, you should marry him. He's got money. I talked to him about it. And you're going to want money because money can make blah, blah, blah. I mean, she's just horrible.
I
And
know.
they go
She's
back and they get a picture. And Marie makes sure she sits next to Peggy's boyfriend, which he's not really the boyfriend,
right.
and and that Fred and Peggy are sitting next to each other. And the picture is so telling because Marie is looking at the boyfriend and Fred is looking at Peggy, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beginning of the end
Yeah.
of their relationship.
Right. Now it's interesting to me that at the same time as that's happening, Al is they're having a big dinner for him to honor him, to
Oh
have
yeah,
him come from the bank at the bank. And
right,
this is after he's
right,
given the loan to this guy that doesn't have any collateral. Although he says
right.
his collateral is in his brains, in his hands, in
In his
his who
hands.
he
Yep.
is. Yeah. I love that speech when he's talking to the guy who owns the bank. Um, so I love that Myrna Loy is keeping track with her fork on of how many drinks he's had on the
Lots to talk about.
tablecloth.
Oh my God, Myrna Loy, Myrna Loy,
Oh, I know. I love her.
Myrna
I
Loy. I mean,
I
she
know.
is definitely on my list of favorite actresses.
Oh, mine too. Mine
She's
too.
stunning, but she's intelligent and it's so profound because like you said, I mean, they weren't afraid to tell the soldier's story, what it
Right.
was like to come home. And really where it started was it William Wyler's wife saw a short story in one of the soldier magazines.
Yes.
And she was like, we got to do something with this.
Right.
Talks
Because
about what
William
it's like.
Wyler had been filming things in the war
Yes.
too.
Yes.
So
Yes. So
it,
they realized, yeah, we're not telling the soldier's story.
mhm.
One little article is not telling their story.
Right.
And what they came up with this script,
I know it's
everybody,
beautiful.
it just goes to show you how fabulous teams can be.
Yes, it's a
Two people
beautiful
that get
story.
together for this story are absolutely amazing.
Now back to the dinner. He gives a speech and he's kind of giving a dig to the president by
And
telling
he's
this story
drunk
about
because he's
he's
been
drunk.
drinking before.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She's
Before he
counting the
left
drink.
home, yeah. And so he tells this story about we were told to go to take this hill, but he's talking about, well, but we don't have collateral, so we didn't go get the hill and we lost the war. And then he switches gears and
Yeah.
says,
And
I
he
don't
says, well, I
have,
can't remember what some of my point is.
but I love the Corn Belt Building and Loan, and I love, or whatever it's called. And I think we're going to be so successful, and we're going to be helping the servicemen. We're going to be giving them loans, and they're going to be successful, and that's going to help the economy, basically, is what he's saying,
Right.
which
Right.
appeases his
Oh,
boss.
yes. It
But
appeases.
oh my gosh, when they get home and then they talk to Peggy about her night, She says, I'm going to break up that marriage.
Yeah.
His wife is horrible to him. And
She's
she,
just awful. Yeah.
well, she's
She doesn't love him.
crass.
And she goes, and she doesn't love him.
No, she doesn't love him.
He deserves to be loved. This is one
Yeah.
of my favorite scenes too. This whole conversation between the three of them.
Yeah. Me too. Because, and I love what he says to Fred later. Now I'm going to have a still of when they're talking in Butch's
I'm
again.
so glad you're going to bring up that scene in the bar when he has to talk to Fred, because let's finish talking about what
Yeah.
Peggy did to them.
Yeah.
Because
So,
her parents are like, well, Al's like, well, how are you going to break it up with
yeah.
an ex?
Yeah.
You know what their lives are? And she just starts to cry. She's so upset. And she goes, your life has been so easy, the two of you. You always loved each other.
Yeah. And I
You had your
love
honeymoon in the south of France.
and I love what they say back to
blah,
her.
blah, blah. And I love it too, because, Al goes over and stands next to,
Millie.
Millie, and she goes, easy, huh? She goes, how many times did we say we hated each other? How many times did we have to fall in love all over again?
Yeah.
And that just really, because she's just like, what? Which of course needs to be said,
Yes.
because yes, it may appear that Fred and Marie hate each other now, but maybe they always won't.
Right.
No, that's their point of view.
Right.
And which is an appropriate one based off of the struggles in their personal relationship. Of course, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And of course, Peggy has to go, okay. And of course, Al makes a choice right there. I got to talk to Fred.
Right.
He's got to leave her alone. He's got to make a point to never see her again.
Unless, of course, there's always that unspoken unless you leave Marie. When they're talking
It is unspoken. It is
in
unspoken.
Butch's.
Yeah.
It's
So-
unspoken, but it's
Yeah.
yeah.
So you're still with so I see you're still with your wife. That little stuff, little
Mhm.
banter.
Mhm.
And then he gets to it. I really think very highly of my daughter. And it just so happens I think very highly of you too.
Yes.
I mean, Al wants to make it very clear to Fred, I care about you,
yeah.
but I can't have my daughter
Get into this mess.
get into this mess. It's not
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
It's you got to clean up your mess first before you get my daughter in the mess.
Right.
And of course, Fred understands the reason behind this.
Yeah.
But this is one of Ariel's favorite scenes, because when Al says, "I want you to make sure you never see her again," this is another part of acting without acting. When Dana Andrews says no words, and you see on his face his struggle,
Yeah.
his pain, his struggle, his resolve,
Right.
without any words.
And then he goes and calls her.
Yeah.
Now, this is what they call a deep focus scene.
Yes.
He's upstage, what we call in theater upstage. And in theater, we call it split focus. They call it deep focus in movie. And then Fred's in the booth. Al has
Met up with Homer because
Homer has come in. Oh,
Yeah.
here, let's go play that. Let me show you my piano lessons, which he had said something to Al earlier, and Al just thought he was joking.
like, you're fine.
And so Al's standing next to the piano, and Hoagie Carmichael and Homer are playing chopsticks or something.
Yeah.
And so he looks back at the phone booth periodically, and then he focuses on
because Fred's on the phone for a little bit.
yeah, right.
I realize it's quite a conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And of course but this is another fine part of acting. Al, without words, is worried.
Yes, he's worried.
You see his concern, and
Yeah.
it's more than just making sure Fred breaks it off. It's, am I about to lose my friend?
Am I about to lose my daughter?
Am I about to lose my daughter? I mean, there's a lot at stake there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who I might lose both, or I might lose one, and losing one is not an option for him either.
I know.
I don't think he
Right.
likes either of those options.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
And
and
then
it's
when,
just so good. There's a reason why he wins an Oscar for this. Although I feel like Dana Andrews, if he wasn't nominated, he should have been, because Dana Andrews is so beautiful in this movie.
I
I mean,
love Dana
my daughter
Andrews.
actually is in love with him. He is on her list of men she loves.
Oh yeah, because his face always tells so
Oh, he's
much.
such an amazing actor. And it's just that scene is, you're right, the camera shot. We talk about, Shane would love to see this movie because the camera shots are amazing.
Yeah.
And
Now
that
there's another deep focus one at the end of the movie that I'm also going to have a still of. We won't talk about that yet though. So then here we are telling the story of the movie, but we want you to go watch it. That's why we're doing
Yeah,
this.
I think let's just, I don't want to keep talking about the whole movie because it's 2 hours and 30 minutes long. And
Yeah.
it's well worth your 2 hours and 30 minutes because their individual stories and how the three of them end up coming together. Because there's another important scene that happens soon after this where Fred's back at work and Homer comes in to see him.
Yes.
And the gentleman that's sitting there and asks for a ham and cheese sandwich, and Fred's making him a sandwich, and he's making ice cream, sodas, and Homer orders one, and because Homer notices something's odd at the bar because Fred just walks right out after the phone call, after he calls Peggy.
Right.
So Homer wants to find out what the heck's going on, and because he says to Al, "What's wrong with Fred?" Oh, he just had back to work.
Right.
So then he's like, I don't like that answer. I'm going to go talk to Fred.
Right.
And Fred's like, oh, just kind of brushes it off. And Homer's not buying it. You can tell he's not buying it, right?
Yeah.
So then this gentleman is reading his newspaper. He's got an American pin flag, the American flag pin. And then he starts talking to Homer about good old Americanism, and he apologizes to Homer. You shouldn't have had to go there and do blah, blah, blah.
And
And
lose your
Homer's like,
hands.
and Homer's like, excuse me?
Yeah.
I don't think you understand what we were doing there.
Yeah.
And the guy just has a bunch of horrible things to say. He starts to kind of assault Homer, quite frankly.
Yeah, he does.
And then Fred jumps over the counter and punches the guy, and the guy falls through this glass case. And he's like, I know. I know the customers are, it's right, but not this time. And he takes off his apron, and he and Homer walk out. And that's important
Yeah, it is.
because this movie also shows the shift and things that start to happen to American people.
Right.
And
Because I think that guy is like maybe part of the American Nazi Party or
I think
something
so
like
too.
that.
And he's like, there, read it in this paper. It's right there in black and white, right there. And Homer's
We
like,
got
I don't
sold.
know.
We got sold a
We
bill
got
of goods.
sold out. We got
Yeah.
sold a bill of rights, and a bill of goods. And this bill of goods, we shouldn't have had to do that. It was none of our business, and sticking our noses in and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Homer's just like, wow, you have that way wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how just that little bit of scene, they show what starts to happen after World War II, just ever so slightly, that it's really the beginning of kind of the Cold War.
Yep.
This is the beginning of the Cold War. And, but it's such a great scene too, because after that, how Fred and Homer are just walking along talking.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred tells Homer, you make sure you tell Wilma you love her and you marry her.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Don't lose the important things in life.
right. And then that's one of the next scenes. I'm going to just show a little bit of it when Wilma comes over and says, my family want me to go away. And he goes,
Yeah.
but you don't know what it would be like.
And he's getting ready to
live
go to
with
bed.
me."
He's
Right.
getting ready to go to bed.
And
Yeah.
so he says, you come up and you see what it's like. Because she says, if I don't have the courage for it, we'll soon know it.
Oh, well, no.
But I keep trying to tell you that I love you.
Yeah, I've never stopped loving you. I still want to marry you. And he's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'm going to show you what it's like to get
Yeah.
me ready to go to bed.
I've learned how to take this harness off. I can wiggle into my pajama top.
I'm lucky I have my elbows. Some of the boys don't. But I can't button them up.
I'll do that, Homer.
This is when I know I'm helpless. My hands are down there on the bed. I can't put them on again without calling to somebody for help. I can't smoke a cigarette or read a book. If that door should blow shut, I can't open it and get out of this room. I'm as dependent as a baby that doesn't know how to get anything except cry for it. Well, now you know, Wilma. Now you have an idea of what it is. I guess you don't know what to say. It's all right. Go on home. Go away like your family said.
I know what to say, Homer. I love you, and I'm never going to leave you. Never.
You mean you didn't mind?
Of course not. I told you I loved you.
I love you, Wilma. I always have, and I always will.
Good night, darling. Sleep well.
Good night, Wilma.
Because it's beautiful
It
how she
is.
helps him, and he's expecting her to be disgusted because he's got
Right.
these things strapped on him that's
Right.
how he uses his claw things, and then he's like, okay, now that these are off, I'm helpless.
Right.
And
And she
then
kisses him
good
goodnight.
night, and she leaves the door slightly open, and this is one of my favorite ones too. He's crying because he's overwhelmed. And this is what I was saying last night. I said, you know what I love about this movie? It might just very well be one of the first movies that showed men crying,
I know.
because men weren't allowed to cry. But
I
these
know.
men cry.
Cry. Yeah.
They cry.
Yeah.
And they have these deep feelings, and another scene where Fred finally he's walking through the airplane graveyard, and he's packed, and he's leaving. His mom is saying to his parents, goodbye, I got to get out. Well, no, this is an important one too. He doesn't have to break it off with Marie.
She breaks it off.
He breaks
with
it
him.
off with him. I want a divorce, because she thinks he's a loser.
Right.
And then she's got some guy in the apartment, and he's like, what? You couldn't make it after the war? Well, what'd you do? Well, I found ways to make money, which of course is the black market. And that's the people she becomes involved with.
Right.
And then she takes off her wedding ring and she plops it in her purse, and she's like, I want a divorce. So Fred's like, okay, good. You can have it. He's out. Goes home, stays with his parents, packs up, leaves all these letters behind. And his dad's like, well, what letters? Oh, they're nothing. They're just these letters. Packs up. He goes, I don't know where I'm going to go, but I got to get out of here. And they're sad, of course, that he's leaving. But, and his dad, that's another touching scene, reads that awards letter, that citation of how Fred risked his life to try to save his fellow soldiers' lives.
Yeah.
And his parents are crying.
Yeah.
And another man crying in it. But, and then Fred ends up at the, because he's going to go to the airport. He's walking through the graveyard. climbs up into the type of plane that he flew in and has I I think what I love is that he's really sweating when he's having these memories.
Right.
He's crying and he's sweating. I feel like that's a scene where it's like he's starting to get rid of it.
Right.
He's releasing all of that pain
And
at a
that is one of
level
the
where,
most,
man,
it's one of the most famous scenes from that movie. Is that
yeah, it
scene.
is that scene. And
Yeah.
then, then this guy, hey, get out of the plane. What are you doing up there? And that's how he finds his next job. He's going to work and help break down all these airplanes for prefab houses, which of course is a huge industry.
It's gonna be, yeah.
It's
Perry and I were
huge.
talking
He's going to end
when,
up being so successful.
yeah,
And then of course, you know, we get to the wedding at the end of the film
right.
where Homer and
Wilma.
they're it's Wilma and they're little, and it's just in her parents' house, and he's asked Fred to be his best man, and they briefly talk about the job he's got, and he calls it the junk business, but really it's important because there was a housing shortage. I find that fascinating, but I Al comes in. It's probably first time he's seen Fred since he told Fred to break up with his daughter.
Mm,
And, he does mention to Fred, so, you're not with Marie anymore. Nope. Well, I hear you got another job. Yep. And then he just, kind of steps away. But you find out, he's like, so I see the punches for the kiddies. And Millie comes out and he's like, I swear, it's just punch. And he's, because I promised my wife I'm not going to drink anymore. They acknowledged for the first time he really does have a drinking problem. And he has
yes.
promised his wife he's not going to anymore.
Yeah.
And of course, then the wedding ceremony happens. And this is one of my other favorite scenes
Another
because
deep
he
focus.
and Fred and Peggy see each other. They can't keep their eyes off each other.
I know.
Fred's supposed to be they're both supposed to be paying attention to the ceremony, and neither one of them are. They're looking at each other.
I know.
And they can't help but be drawn to each other. And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
One
So
of
I'm
my
gonna have,
favorite things too is that the way it's shot, yes, but when
yes,
he goes over and he says, yeah, I'm in the junk business, whatever, but we're gonna have a rough life. He doesn't even have to ask her to marry him
I know.
because they know they love each other, and he kisses her, and her hat falls off, and I totally love that.
I know. Well, and the other thing I love about it is we're gonna get kicked around and
Yeah,
he's
and you're right.
describing this kind of dismal life, and
Right.
she's just
He's just he's just
smiling at
like,
him.
I don't care what we do.
Right.
Of course, Ariel, when she watches that, she goes, I would look at Dana Andrews the exact same way.
Yeah. But then it's so lovely that he smiles too before he kisses her.
Yes. It's, he finally found his peace. What
Yes.
he said would rehabilitate him.
Well, and she can work too. So if both of them
Well,
are
she already has a
working,
job, right? So,
yeah,
until things start to change and improve, which they will,
yeah,
and the ceremony is so special too, because, I mean, I think it's really, really so sweet when it's time for him to put the ring on her finger, and he has to do special things to hold on to the ring to put it on her, and her hand is shaking, and he
uh-huh,
calms her down.
uh-huh.
It's just lovely. I
And
mean, there's so
everybody's,
many,
you can tell everybody's sort of like,
yeah, how is the ring gonna drop? What's gonna happen?
yeah,
It turns out so wonderful in the celebration. It's so I
yeah,
love it. I love it.
I do
And
too.
you know, I think what makes movies that we love so much so watchable is not only are they watchable once, they're rewatchable.
Yes.
And you get, like, when we watched it last night, Ariel never noticed that Millie was doing the count of his drinks with her fork.
Yeah.
Well, oh my God, is that what she's doing? She's counting the drinks? I said, yeah, she's keeping count. Oh my gosh, I never paid attention to that before. And there's just
Yes.
all these little things that tell their stories in profound ways.
Yes. And I love that they finally, I mean, they're not completely healed because who knows if Al will really be able to keep away from
Right.
alcohol. But I love that he's trying. I
Right.
love that Fred is starting to get over the whole trauma of his friend dying in the
Yeah, working through
plane.
that is so
Plus
important.
all the other stuff. There's probably a bunch of other stuff that
Oh,
happened to
there's
him.
so many things. I mean, like Homer at the beginning tells the story of how, I was down at the bottom of the ship. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up and I'm, in this hospital.
Right,
I didn't know what happened to me. That's traumatic as well because
right,
there's something that happens to you with not understanding how your hands were
right,
gone and
right.
how many other soldiers had to experience things like that.
Well, and not only that, but then there's the whole rehab part of
Oh my
learning to use
God.
those hooks and
Well, your
learning.
cells are completely changed. Every single one of these soldiers now, past, whatever, you don't come back the same person. You
Mm-mm,
never will be the same person.
mm-mm.
You can't be.
Yeah. But
And
I
but,
also like
but
that it shows the families and how they
right, and
have
the
to adjust
families
too.
just loving them.
Yeah. Except that
Millie and
they also have to adjust.
Millie and his
It's,
kids just love him,
yeah.
you know. And the contrast with really how his boss is kind of not very feeling.
No, he's a numbers guy.
Yeah. But that's okay.
Yeah. He's a numbers guy. Yeah. That's the
You
thing
know,
about him.
so yeah, it's to think that they got it from one small article and made it into this based off of, I think, some of the people who were involved in this movie also understood what it was like to be in war.
Yes, they did. Because
They
William
knew,
Wyler was there. He
right?
was he was
They
filming it.
understood. So it was a story that I think everybody understands. The time had come
It
to
was
be honest about what
groundbreaking.
happened. It's
Yeah, it was
very groundbreaking. And
groundbreaking.
as simple as just letting the men cry.
Yeah,
I I I love that they don't cut away from that.
I know.
Beautiful directing
Yeah,
to not cut away from that.
right.
And even at the simplest one, where he's just the sunrise and he's in the plane and he's
I know.
woo,
Because
wow.
he's the first person in his family to fly
Yeah.
in
Well,
a
and
plane.
and, and of course the anticipation of what it's like to come home to all this.
Yeah,
The anticipation is
yeah.
is so palpable. So
Oh, yeah.
yes, we don't mean to tell the whole story, but we can't help it because even as we tell the story, you have to watch it because watching it and us telling it are two different things.
Oh, yeah. There's so
The
much more to it.
experience of it, the
Yes,
emotional, connective
yes,
experience is so real and
yes.
so I don't know how you don't how could you watch it and not be changed?
When I was teaching at Buena, one of my well, it was they probably more than one student wanted to know this, but one student asked me, "What's your favorite movie?" And before I even could think of it, I said, "The Best Years of Our Lives." And it's right after World War II, and it's showing men coming home. Now, that high school is in Sierra Vista where Fort Huachuca is. So
Right,
a lot of those kids in my class were from military families.
right, right.
So I hope they went and watched it
Yeah,
because, I said it's
because
guys
yeah,
coming
I
home
mean,
from the
if
World War
this
II.
isn't if this now, if you don't know anything about this film, but when you watch it, I'd be surprised if it wasn't on your favorite
Yeah,
list.
yeah.
But I do have a hard time, and you and I talk about this almost all the time. People ask, "What's your favorite movie?" I'm like, "What genre?"
I know I say that too. What era, what
I mean, because
genre,
I have what era, what genre, I mean, I am
what
so
actor?
other than so once again, you know, I don't like typical horror, but yet again, I love movies about vampires.
Yeah,
If they're
me
done
too.
right, I love things about vampires. I love, medieval stuff about dragons. I mean,
Yeah,
I love Lord
right.
of the Rings. I love Chronicles of Narnia. I mean, I love stuff like that. These
Yeah,
fantasy type films. Um, I love the sci-fi,
Yeah.
and give me some
So this
sci-fi.
one, we're hoping you go watch it. We
Please
have
do.
described it pretty much, through the movie, but there's a lot of stuff that we left out. And plus, when we're talking about it, you don't see the interaction between the characters. You don't see their faces. You don't feel the emotions that are being conveyed in the movies. And that's why we do this.
And the thing that makes it good too, some people call it a war film, but it isn't. It's a human film. You don't
Mhm.
have to see the war to understand what these individuals went through.
And you don't have to see the war to know that it's kind of an anti-war film.
It kind of is. Yeah.
But then my take is that any war film is an anti-war film because it shows you the horrors
Uh,
of war.
John Wayne was known for saying that.
I
He
just
said
think
that.
it's
He
true.
goes, if you're showing a movie about war, you'd never want to be in war ever again.
It's an anti-war film. Yeah,
Why are we doing this?
I
Right.
know.
He didn't say those exact words, anti-war, but why would, ooh,
I know.
right.
Yeah.
So it's
So
touching,
these
it's loving, it's everything that as human beings we deserve to experience,
Mhm, mhm,
which is acceptance, unconditional love,
mhm.
empathy, compassion,
And healing from our
healing,
grief.
healing in a way that you feel safe healing.
Yeah,
It's
right.
safety.
It is. And the grief, it, you know, the families were willing to let them grieve. Marie wasn't, but everybody else was.
Well, Marie wanted to live a fantasy life
Yeah,
that eventually becomes empty.
yeah,
Or you just never, and that's the other thing that's important. We all have this in life. There are people that grow and people that don't.
yes. True,
She's that example, the people that don't.
true. Yeah, that's true.
All right.
So we don't know what we're going to do next, I don't think.
Well, I think we should talk about like a lighter comedy.
Hmm.
Um, I I was thinking either Philadelphia Story, um, but there's also, and some people might get annoyed by it, but I like bringing up Baby because for
What I was thinking of.
bringing up Baby, Katharine Hepburn, she had to learn comedy through this.
Yes. We could do both of those. We could do one and then we could do the other
Yeah.
to
Um,
show the contrast
yeah.
of
And
the
it's both
development.
Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn together.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Jimmy Stewart.
And
Oh my
Jimmy Stewart.
gosh.
Oh my God.
I love him.
Yeah.
He's so funny.
Yeah. I think bringing up Baby and Philadelphia Story would be fantastic
Let's
because,
do Bringing Up Baby first because early in Katharine Hepburn and Cary
yes.
Grant's careers. It's not the first movie they did together, but
No,
it's one of those screwball
screwball
comedies that
comedy.
you and I said we kind of wanted to do some of
And I would
those.
really like to do that one because I watched it again the other day and I forget how I just laughed so hard.
I
Cary
know.
Grant is hysterical.
I know. Well, she is. She's funny too.
They're so silly together.
When they're locked in the at this in the cell. Oh my God.
It's outlandish, but that's what screwball comedies are supposed to be.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Probable things that happen.
it's not one of those that, oh yeah, this happens every day kind of a
Yes,
thing.
no.
No, no.
So yeah,
Yes.
okay, Bring About Baby. Let's do that one.
Okay, that sounds good. So, thank you for watching this
Thank
whole
you. Thank you.
entire time, and I'm glad that you're with us. I hope you make comments
And I hope
about.
you share it with people so we can get more people on to watch us because we're having
Yes,
fun.
yes, yes. And go watch if you have not seen that movie, go watch
Oh,
that
please watch it.
movie. Be prepared to cry like Billy Wilder. And because there are times when you just cry.
Oh, it's more than being choked up.
Yeah. I mean,
No,
it's
ugly cry.
yeah, yeah. Because the love is so strong. The
It
love is
is.
so
Oh,
strong
yeah. It's
in a
beautiful.
lot of the places in the movie.
Yep.
So Thank you, and
Thank
see
you
you
very
next time.
much, everybody. Bye.